Derivative coaching. I'm like obsessed with this idea now.
Derivative?
Or like I came up with this idea on Tuesday and I've just been like thinking about it constantly. So derivative coaching is where you have somebody who knows a concept really deeply. So for example, Dan Henry understands branding really well. I learned branding from Dan Henry. Now I just taught you what I learned from Dan Henry, but it's way diluted. And so if I follow somebody else and I learn something directly from them without my own experience accentuating
implementing
that learning, I don't understand it as deeply as him, and I physically can't pass on that knowledge as well as somebody else who understands it more deeply. And ultimately, even if you go to the top person in the world to learn something, you're never going to learn it as deeply as them because you don't have their specific experience.
Totally.
So without your own experience accentuating that fact, you have a derivative learning of that original person. It goes along with the same way of like how you view the world, views of reality, because you basically inherit that from somebody else. And then if you never question it, you never have your own life experience to accentuate that, you're never truly going to believe it, or you're never going to ultimately reach your full potential. We will never understand something as deeply as the source that taught it to us without our own life experience teaching it to us. With that, welcome to the Prolific Super Producer Podcast. We're talking about how to get fans for your music today. If you want to have success in the music industry, you need somebody to listen to your music, and those people are called fans. So we're going to be talking about the whole fan journey today of taking people from they don't even know who you are to diehard fans where they are willing to go to bat for you, buy all of your merch, and ultimately do anything in their power to support you in your artist journey. So with that, before I dive in there, I want to give you something that's just super helpful that's going to get you from A to Z really fast in terms of getting up to speed in your music, getting everything established, making sure that you have professional looking profiles on socials, as well as great sounding music that actually makes an impact on your very first release. So if you want that guide, you can get that at nightowlmusicgroup.com/guide. It's a really long URL. I am sorry for that, but it is nightowlmusicgroup.com/guide. And that will give you the framework that we use in our agency to actually get people 100,000 streams on their very first release after working with us. So you can go ahead and get that guide. It teaches you our whole framework for writing those songs, getting socials set up, and producing content to get those results. So,
and this is free?
It's completely and totally free.
I'm
yes.
like breaking character for a second in the pot. Like I'm actually going to go look at this.
It's like, yeah, you should. It's honestly, I'm really proud of it. It's like legit content. If you actually go and do the stuff in the guide, you're going to get incredible results. So cool. I would highly recommend getting that.
Let's go.
With that, let's talk about the fan journey, how to take people from complete strangers to diehard fans. So Nathan, do you want to kick us off of what is the first step of the fan journey?
So right, how do you get people from not knowing who you are to knowing who you are, right? You have to connect what's unknown, which is you right now, to what's known, which is like, you have to connect your music to become known in someone, like for someone to add it to a playlist, to know who you are, to like look you up and do more. Like for that to even start, they have to become aware. So this first step in the fan journey is like people are just unaware, right? And you need to get them to see value in you as an artist. How do you do that? Just like super tactically, practically. Okay, so somehow they stumble across a music video of yours. They stumble across a short form piece of content of yours. To get people like from unaware to aware, this first step is as simple as stopping the scroll. Just finding some way to position you in front of somebody else. And this is where something like content is super duper powerful, because you have the ability to get this organic reach to where you can get shown, you can literally get positioned in front of somebody who has no idea who you are, and you have an opportunity to stop the scroll. They have an opportunity to just find out who you are. If someone has to go from unaware to aware, they have to come across you, and they have to stop the scroll, because you're not only competing against all the other, not just in the content world, right? You're not only competing against all the other music artists who are trying to do a similar thing, who are trying to get their music heard and their music whatever. You are also competing against the cat that fell down, or the dinosaur that's holding a lightsaber, or the baby that said a curse word. Like you're scrolling against all these other entertaining pieces of content, and so you have to have some way to stick out so that you just become known to this person in their daily life. So I feel like that's kind of just the first step. What do you think, Tyson?
So you need to get your content to be so captivating and so compelling that it stops people from scrolling past you right away and engages them, and ultimately it attracts them towards you and your brand. Because ultimately, if it's a terrible piece of content, then people are just going to scroll by. Even if they watch it, they're not going to really engage with it. They're not going to follow you. They're not going to really hold you in high esteem in their mind. The goal is to stop the scroll, but also get them interested in you and your music. Because this is another key, is that a lot of people make the mistake of just getting attention, which you can get attention in a lot of ways. I heard this from actually a guy, Damian Keys. So he has a YouTube channel, right? He's a music marketer guru type of guy. And he was talking about a lot of like female artists that he's worked with that get a whole bunch of followers because they're attractive, and there's a whole bunch of dudes that are following them, but they don't care anything about the music. And so they're producing all of this content to try to go viral, and sometimes they're successful, but it does nothing for their music. Like they have 100,000 Instagram followers, but they have 100 monthly listeners on Spotify because there's no translation from the person to the music. So that is also another key and a very big factor when we're trying to grow a music brand. We want to make the music front and center of that brand. After we go from this stage though, so after you finally produce some great content, get them aware of who you are, right? They've seen a video, they know who you are. It often takes a lot of content to get them to the next step, right? Because there was some studies done on car commercials. They wanted to figure out how many times one person needed to see a car commercial before they recognized that car in everyday life. And they found out that a single person needed to see the car commercial 7 times before you recognize that car again and again.
In your daily life.
To even have like a relatively like okay chance of actually following that brand and buying that car, they needed to show it to at least 7 times to an individual person. So when it comes to you, that means you need a lot of content that is hitting people multiple times. I've worked with an artist who was just terrified of posting, some promotional material and it was just like a simple reel. It was like, oh, hi, like, my name's so-and-so, and here's my music, basically. That was the whole reel. And he was terrified to post that more than once because he was afraid he was going to bother his audience. And ultimately, first of all, most of your audience won't see it. And then secondly, it's okay because people probably don't even remember seeing it the first time. And even if they do, it's like, oh, I remember that guy. And then they might follow you after that point. Or it just reminds them like, oh yeah, this person exists. He writes music and he plays music. Maybe I'm going to go listen to him on Spotify next time I'm in the car, right? Yeah. The more top of mind you can be, the better, because they are aware that you exist, that you're still making music, and ultimately you're still putting stuff out there. So
in the more top of mind that you can be, like, I think I used to think this too, is like, oh, I don't want to overwhelm people. I don't want to oversaturate, to use the cliche term, right? Like, but the reality is, especially now, people move on so fast. I mean, how many times do thumbs swipe up with content on anywhere? And even if they saw you for a second and that was one of the 7 times, and then they saw you another time, like, people move on so quick. You know what I mean? And the algorithms are honestly so smart too, that if you are not engaging with content, it's kind of like a self-cleansing system. You're not going to be recommended that content anymore. You know what I mean? Because the algorithms and these social media platforms want to keep you on platform. I don't know. I just feel like that's kind of a fear we could just bust really quick to help people out. Like, you're not going to overwhelm people if you're making content consistently,
100%. I would also add on to that sometimes recognition. So if you know somebody, you'll actually pay more attention to them. If you show up multiple times in their feed, they might actually spend more time with your content after the 5th time they've seen you than the first time. Because the first time they had no relatability, they had 0 relationship with you. But now, all of a sudden, after the 4th or 5th time, they now kind of recognize you. They're like, oh, I've seen this person before. Like, he's doing music stuff still, isn't he? And so, like, that's the type of relatability and the amount of just volume of content that it is sometimes required to get an actual fan or follower to start following you. With that, after we talk about that, now these people are aware of us. Now they're actually becoming followers because they've seen you enough times, they've spent enough time with you via content that they're now following you. They might have watched, they might have gone over to YouTube and watched your music video or something, and now they're interested in you and your music. And so they're actually going to follow you on socials. So on Instagram, TikTok, like, they've actually subscribed to communication from you essentially through that platform. The next step after they are aware of you and have started following you, like at this point in time, your job is to stay in touch with them. You want to put out regular updates. You want to make sure that they're still exposed regularly to you and your brand and your music.
Yeah.
Keep it fresh, keep it interesting. At this point in the game, we're actually moving on from just music-related content to you-related content.
Yeah.
Because we want to attract people to us, get them aware of us through the music so that they are aware that we do music, and that is still the front and center of the brand. But now we want to move them into a more of a relational type conversation of getting them to know us, like why we create music, what other hobbies do we have, what basically why they should be interested in us as humans. And that can be a kind of a double-edged sword too, because it's like, I don't know why people should be listening to me. I'm not very interesting. But the reality is, I promise you, you are interesting. So for example, I'm going to use the same artist that was afraid of bothering his Instagram followers.
Let's go.
This guy thinks that he has nothing special about him at all. He's just like this everyday Joe Schmo. And his catchphrase is delightfully mundane, right? But the problem with this is that he is not your average Joe Schmo. He has written he used to work at a grocery store as in the self-checkout lane, and he would write entire songs in his head and then go home and record them.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, he knew every chord. He knew every chord of the entire song, every rhythm, every melody, all stored in his head before he went home to record it.
Oh my goodness.
Like that, nobody does that except for this dude. Okay,
this guy.
And then also, in addition, he sees music in color, and so the only other person that I know who does that is Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
So this guy, right, thinks there's nothing interesting about him because his assumption internally, and he's told me this before, is that his assumption is that everybody else probably has the same skills as me. And so everybody's like me. And therefore I'm not special. And then he looks at other people who have other, talents than he does. And he's like, I'm a terrible human. I'm an untalented human being because I'm not good at XYZ that they are good at. And he assumes that they already have the skills that he has as well.
Wow. Okay.
The last point is that he also plays every single instrument imaginable. Like I recorded an entire album with him, and he played every single note in the entire thing by himself. The piano, the guitar, the bass, the drums, and he sang vocals. All of it.
Plenty of postable things.
Exactly. And it's like, okay, you think that there's nothing special about you. Like, this guy is extraordinarily special, frankly. You just need to show people that. And that's the whole point of this stage of the process. Been unaware, now they're aware because they saw your music. Now they're following you. Now you're building that relationship.
Oh my goodness. I think too, I don't want to get too woo-woo over here on this podcast, but the whole thing, no, everyone has their own fingerprints. Everyone's unique. Yes. Actually, tactically, you want a tactic? Be you. Oh my goodness. Be yourself. Because if you can actually be you, there's nobody like you. I hate to be so Barney over here in Sesame Street, but for real, there's nobody like you. And the more you lean into that, could you imagine the pieces of content that this guy could post that Tyson is talking about? Seeing music in color, writing songs at the grocery store. It's crazy. So I would just challenge you, just like Tyson has said, don't settle for that. Don't stop for, I'm not that interesting. I'm not whatever. Honestly, I'm going to say that's an excuse because I don't buy it. So I would challenge you as big brothers over here. No, you're cool. You're cool. Come on, you've got stuff. You're your own person. You've got stories. Lean into it.
Everybody is fascinating in some way. And so you just need to find out what that is. If you don't know what it is, ask the people around you. Ask your friends, ask your partner, ask your girlfriend, spouse, whoever you have around you, your family. They will likely be able to point out what is special about you and what is unique about you. Another thing that I would encourage you to do is share other interests you have. For example, I like Pokemon. It's kind of a weird thing that I have, but
let's go, dude.
I have a tattoo of a Pokemon on my arm. If you're on YouTube, you can see I have Squirtle that is on my arm. Yeah. And for a long time, I would always hide the fact that I was nerdy, and I'd be like, oh, I'm not. I don't like that stuff.
Don't
I was trying to be cool, right?
Yeah.
And at a certain point, though, there's also other people who are nerdy who are probably closet nerds like me and would also like to know that I also have their same interests.
To resonate with you.
Yeah, exactly. They resonate with me. It's and it's such kind of a niche thing, right? Pokemon's still fairly popular, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of a niche thing that's like, okay, now somebody can relate to me more. Like you might be
Yes.
thinking like, oh, I like Pokemon too. Like Tyson likes Pokemon. Oh, that's interesting.
Yes,
Right?
and we
It's
both
like,
and we do music and what you know. It's
Yeah.
like you're building rapport virtually.
Exactly. And that's the whole point is like now you can combine other interests. Like, and you say I have like 4 interests that I talk about regularly. So say I talk about my dog, Pokemon, and what's another interest that I have? Business, something.
Yeah.
And I talk about all those, 4 things, including with my music, on my artist profile. All of a sudden, everybody who shares some of those interests, like say you like Pokemon, business, and music, but you don't you don't care about pets or my dog, then you still might be interested in me, right? You're still attracted.
100%.
Like you have enough in common with me that you're going to feel like you have some sort of relationship, like, this relatability aspect with me that is going to drive you to, want to follow me, want to listen to my music, want to support me in whatever else I do in the future.
What I wish I would have heard a long time ago, especially like trying to be like my favorite artist, not just write songs, but like take on their personality or like the way they present themselves. And it's like, it's the same thing with writing songs like we've talked about. If you are trying to write songs like your favorite artist, awesome, great starting point. But if you continue to do that and you never actually lean into who you are and what the music that's actually coming from you, you're never going to develop your own sound. It's the same thing with yourself. If you're trying to be like other people, if you're trying to be like who you think you should appear as, you're never actually being yourself. You're never actually getting to an authentic place. And especially nowadays, I think people can sniff that out. Like we know so quick if someone is trying to sell us something, if someone is trying to do something, if someone's not really being them. And it's almost like, again, I think the tactic is to be yourself because so many people are trying to be somebody else that if you can be authentic, you're going to pop through the screen. That might be enough to stop the scroll because someone's like, oh, a human for once. You know what I mean? Like this person's like actually feeling something or talking about something or whatever. So I thought that was great.
I would say that even gets more meta, right? Why is authenticity so attractive to people? Because ultimately we're all insecure. When I see somebody else being super authentic with who they are and just being open with like, okay, yeah, this is me. This is me. And all of a sudden I'm going to be attracted to that because I'm inherently insecure and I want to see somebody else who is fully authentic, and I'm going to be attracted to that because I want to be that same person. The same way though, if you see somebody who's inauthentic, it's going to turn you off. They're like, oh, because they're inauthentic, all of a sudden you are going to then not want to be them. You're not going to want to live like them. And it's then inherently going to turn you off from even following them, even engaging with their content. They're going to be very bland to you versus somebody who is extremely authentic, even if they're quirky. Like if they're quirky, it's even better, right? It's like,
anyway, it almost works even better. Yeah.
I think we've talked about that enough.
Yeah. I think all of that, honestly, like just rewind a little bit if you need to, but all of everything we've been talking about is perfect for this follower stage where you have people that have hit follow, hit subscribe, yada, yada, yada. I think that's all relevant there. And just to say too, just because you have a follower is not a fan, because we're going to get to here in a little bit. A follower is not necessarily a fan. Just because they hit follow is what I'm trying to say. Doesn't mean maybe they listen to some of your music, doesn't mean they're listening regularly, right? Doesn't mean that if you're coming into their hometown, if you're ever to do a show or something like that, doesn't mean they're going to, purchase a ticket. But if someone, because here's a crazy stat that I learned the other day. It was like the average person that has a YouTube account, like is consuming content, not a creator, but someone who has a YouTube account to just watch stuff and subscribe to people, is on average, they're subscribed to over 100 channels. I feel like there's something there, and to tie to music too. Like, okay, if someone's followed you, they've probably followed it like a lot of other people too. And maybe like we can get a little ego driven as artists, like, oh, someone's following me, like they only care, like I'm their artist. And maybe, and I do think, as we're going to get to, for some people you are. For some people, you will be their artist, and you're going to get to that number one spot when you look at your Spotify Wrapped and you show up as their number one streamed artist, right? Like, absolutely, there's a place for that. It's just most people, just because they hit follow, doesn't mean that they view you that way, right? And so I just think that can be a little helpful here at this stage. Oh, I've got 100,000 followers on Instagram. It doesn't necessarily mean you've got 100,000 fans. A little foreshadowing of where we're going. But anything there, Tyson? Or we want to move on to what?
Let's move on to the next stage.
All right, hit him with it, man. What happens after that in this fan journey? We've come from unaware, now they're aware, now they're a follower.
After you've had enough interactions with your followers, they are going to be completely and wholly bought into you. And So what they're going to do now is they're finally going to go off their Instagram, off their TikTok, and they're going to go to a different platform. And that platform is likely Spotify. And they're going to actually stream your music. And whether it's a new release that you came out with that you posted about, or they were just curious at some point in time. They saw a piece of content that was engaging, that was compelling enough that they're like, I'm going to go check out his actual music. And so then they go to your Spotify and they start streaming your stuff. So this is the stage where they are now an engaged listener. So not only are they a follower, but they are engaged with your music specifically, and they're enjoying your music enough to listen to it regularly. This person is going to be very interested in saving your songs to their playlists. If you look on your Spotify for artists, you can see what playlists you're on, how many times you're streaming. That's a good indicator of how many people are actually engaged listeners and coming over from other platforms to listen to you regularly. And if you don't have any private playlists that your song is on, it's a good indicator that you haven't warmed everybody up enough by building that relationship. If you haven't built that relationship, they're not going to actually listen to you on Spotify, and they're not going to save your song. Your songs speak for themselves, which happens occasionally, but not that often, right? Because there's so many options. There's so much good music out there. I'm going to prioritize the people that I feel like I have a relationship with and I like their music. Yeah. So you have to have that kind of double whammy as an artist.
That's that next section. And these people are probably like, they've hit follow on Spotify, like they went out of their way because they enjoy your stuff so much they want to be notified when you drop. Like this is that next section, kind of like I was talking about, like just because they're a fan doesn't mean they're doing this kind of stuff. But an engaged listener, like Tyson just described, that's the kind of person who, if someone's going off platform from where they found you and taking a little bit of time out of their day to check you out and hit play or hit save or create a playlist and add your, like I view it as an honor if someone added my song to a workout playlist or a chill playlist or a study like that is mind-blowing to me that someone thought that my song would have resonated with them so much that they could see it being a part of their daily life, whether that's a workout or a study session or whatever. So an engaged listener is, that's just crazy. It's humbling to me, at least that's how I view it, that someone would go off platform. I just think this is a really cool stage, but there's more, right? Someone can go even further than this.
If somebody's willing to go off platform for you, you had better be able to deliver. What I mean by that
thank you for
is
saying
you need to make sure that when they're coming to your Spotify, they're not going to be disappointed with what they find there. This kind of goes into another one of my core principles is that you only produce your best stuff, because if you produce stuff that's mediocre, that's what is going to be associated with you when they go to Spotify. They might actually unfollow you on Instagram if they go to Spotify and are disappointed, undermining everything that you've done up to this point if your music isn't truly that good. Some people will look past that fact because they have enough of a relationship with you. They're like, I don't care that his music sucks. I'm going to listen to it anyway. I know artists like this. I know artists like this personally who have such strong brands that they still get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of listens every single month. Amazing. Because they have such strong brands, even though their music is so-so. It's good enough that it's not going to turn enough people off that they still have success. There's kind of multiple ways to have success in music. That's another, I guess, takeaway that you can take from this is that you can potentially be a so-so artist but still be successful, despite that fact. But at the same time, I would rather have the all-encompassing experience of you have great content, you build a relationship, and then you go to Spotify and they're like, oh, their music is so good. I need it on my workout playlist. You turn them into Batman because they're just so desperate to have your stuff.
Their voice drops 3 octaves.
Yeah. And they can move very quickly, I would say, from the top of this, from unaware to a true fan. So the next stage after engaged listener is a true fan. This is where they are actively engaged with you, bought in, and they're going to buy your stuff. That's really the kind of difference that I would say is an engaged listener willing to listen to your stuff. Basically, there's no financial investment yet. There's time. They've still made a time investment with you, which is huge. I don't want to undersell that. But this next stage is that next tier up of, okay, now that I've spent a bunch of time with you, I am willing to go out and I'm going to buy a ticket to your show. I'm going to go buy that sweatshirt that has your logo on it.
No, I think that like this is crazy. And again, this is just like mind blowing to me. You know, people can get to this level where they're not only streaming your music and, you know, and really supporting you that way or sharing your music too, but like to pull out the credit card or pull out the debit card, just open their wallet and like spend money in other ways that maybe still connected to your music. Or I know a lot of artists have like, you know, paid communities that you can be a part of, and, you know, you can get access to giveaways and stuff like that. So for someone to go out of their way to spend money on physical products or digital products that aren't necessarily just streaming your song is pretty crazy. And I think that that's really a true fan, is they've, like we've been talking about, like it's just the escalation and it's the compounding of all the steps we've talked about for someone to get to this point where they just dig you. They really like you're making songs that they just really resonate with. You are absolutely one of their top artists. It doesn't in a way, it's like it almost doesn't matter what you do or what you create or what you present. People will naturally be interested just because of who you are. And this is kind of crazy too. Maybe this is a conversation, Tyson, some what you think, like, you know, like there's artists that really were a big part of my, like, you know, middle school, high school period of time. And like that artist really meant a lot to me. And even if now, you know, fast forward, you know, over a decade, like even if now it's not the same level of impact, you know, with like the music they're currently making, I still hold them in high esteem because of what prior music did for me, because of what they did for me at one time. And I went to their shows in high school or whatever. So I just think that's an interesting conversation too. If you have someone get to this point where they're a fan, there's a chance that they're always going to be at least checking in with you throughout maybe the rest of their life, like as long as you're creating music, which that I feel like is that's like a legacy thing, you know, like you've created a batch of songs or an album or even just a single that just, it hit them at the right time and they needed it and it helped them so much that they almost always feel indebted to you, you know, like in a way. So they'll give your new song a try, even if it sounds different than how you did 10 years ago, you know? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's totally true. And I think that's ultimately the goal, right, that we all want to get our fans to, is that we want them to be engaged for the long term, the long haul. Like they're always going to be the first ones to buy our album or to stream our songs or to, you know, engage with any new content. They're going to be part of our paid communities. They're going to be supporting us on Patreon. They're going to be buying every single piece of merch possible, right? That is the ultimate goal that we all want our fans to be in. But I think even beyond that, and stepping aside even from like the monetary, like being, you know, monetarily successful with your music, I think that impact that you can have as a musician is not anything to be understated. Like if we think about it, and I'm sure everybody has these, like if you're into music at all, everybody has these artists, right? Mm-hmm. I can think of specifically, there was one band that I listened to on repeat. They had 2 albums, but I can remember listening to them my senior year of high school. Like that was the band that defined my senior year of high school for me, because I listened to them a lot in that year. I listened to other bands too, but like that was the band that like just really resonated with me at that period of my life. I occasionally will still go back and stream that specific album because I want to get that, you know, a little bit of that feeling back of that I had when I was in my senior year of high school. So, you know, there's actual studies done. Spotify did a huge study on like why people listen to music. The number one reason people listen to music is for nostalgia. And we also stop gaining our favorite bands, unquote, when we turn 30. When we turn 30, we stop finding new music that like resonates with us so deeply that we're going to be like lifelong hardcore fans.
That makes a lot of sense.
So it's actually a little bit harder to convert older individuals into lifelong fans of that caliber. It's not impossible, but very difficult comparatively to the younger generation, which can be a good and bad thing. But I think people make an overemphasis on trying to appeal to the younger generation for that reason. But there's also some value in it as well. So kind of pick your own poison there of like who you're actually trying to get interested in your music, and also be aware that use that knowledge in a good way. And what I mean by that is don't try to write music just because you know it's going to appeal to a certain group. Just write music that you know is good. Find out your audience through your own experimentation, your own content, music. Find out who your audience is, and then appeal to them from there. So find out who already resonates with you and then kind of expound upon that rather than trying to appeal to an audience that isn't actually yours. It usually backfires on you because you're trying to not be yourself to appeal to a generation that you don't understand. So that can, again, backfire very quickly.
Yes.
In today's world, you'll just get canceled. So, or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. Adios. So at like this stage, the fan stage, and you've got people that you've brought in, right? We've gone through the whole journey from unaware to fan. What's some tactical stuff that we can be doing as artists that's like to really nurture these people? I mean, we've kind of talked about that 80-20 principle on here before, but like, right, the reality is probably 20% of your fan base, especially, if you get to the point where music is a thing or if it's just a side hustle or something, but probably 20% of your fan base is responsible for 80-ish% of the revenue or the results or the what's making it a success, So it's like, and that's probably the fan base, the core people that really rock with you, that are willing to spend a lot more money and time with you than just streaming or just getting a CD or something. Like they might move a little further along the line. So like, I don't know, just what's some, because you're in the artist development world too, what's some like tactical stuff fan wise that we can do as artists to really, just say thank you to these people and nurture these people and give them an opportunity to support us even further.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is giving people the ability to go closer. So proximity is huge because right when all of a sudden you're an artist and you're putting out content, all of a sudden you're seen as an authority in some way, whether that's just like a cultural, societal authority in their world, like you're still somewhat of a guide to them. By putting yourself in that position, by putting out music, like you automatically put yourself in that category, whether you want to or not is completely arbitrary. But people will put you on a pedestal for being an artist eventually. And once you're there, all of a sudden proximity means a lot to people. So imagine if you're just a gigantic Taylor Swift fan, right? How much does it cost to spend a day with Taylor Swift?
Oh my goodness.
Like,
a jaw-dropping amount.
That's the point, though. Like, that is how valuable Taylor Swift's brand is and Taylor Swift as an artist. Like, that's the value is proximity. So, like, that's why backstage passes are worth more. Or that's why people pay more for them, because they want to be able to go backstage, go into the green room with the band, and, hang out, drink a beer, and, have a good time. Like, that in and of itself is incredibly valuable for this upper echelon of followers who are true fans. Like they are willing to spend the extra money to get the backstage pass to meet you, to shake your hand, and they're going to be fangirling all over you, right? At the end of the day, like that's what happens. Didn't you have a story that you wanted to share about that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, just this whole phase. So like my very first experience with realizing in a very tangible way what proximity can do and your music can do. So one of the shows that I did with my band, this was a while ago, but it was the first experience I had of someone I did not know, who I feel like over the course of our set that we played, it was just like 40 minutes, we were just opening, it was like 40 minutes, that she went from unaware all the way to fan. And over the course of our set. And that's, most people probably aren't going to do that. But for this one person of the entire crowd, who came and found me after the show, after we played, tears in her eyes, and asked me what the last song we played was. And it was the last song. It wasn't even the first one. The very last one. What was the last song that you played? And I told her, and then she was like, what's it about? And I told her, and in that particular case, it was about dealing with depression and about overcoming depression and climbing out of that hole and finding yourself again. And she, just kept crying, and she just grabbed me and she was like, I needed this tonight. I needed to hear this tonight. Thank you. And then left. And like that moment, I will never forget that. I see her as vividly as if I'm looking at Tyson right now. Like that moment forever cemented in my mind. Never underestimate the value of a song and what it can do for even just one person. So like that's why like this tattoo that I have, like this is that song. It's the waveform of that song. And I got that really quickly after that show, because just to always remind me, like that was one song. It was the last song of our set. We are opening for a bigger band just here in our hometown, and yet one person was rocked to her core so much that it helped. It resonated with her, and I believe she went through that whole fan journey within those 40 minutes. Anyway, that's kind of my story there of like, just for other artists out there, hey, like don't let your ego get the better of you. Like if your song resonates with one person like that, it can resonate with 10 people. It could resonate with 100 just as your platform grows and as you have the ability to reach more people like that one girl for me and for our band, like will pop up and you will have those people. And I think, Tyson, if you kind of want to like close this with this 1,000 fan thing that's like out there, maybe artists have heard of it, maybe they haven't, but if you have 1,000 people like this one girl, her name's Miriam, like I remember her name. Like, so if you have 1,000 Miriams for your band, some pretty magical, powerful stuff can happen that make doing music full time very real. I think it'd be good to kind of talk about that.
The whole concept of the 1,000 true fans, this was popularized in a blog post actually originally.
Oh, really?
I can't remember the original author, but it was just this kind of inconsequential blog post that somebody threw out. They're like, oh, this is a cool concept. But it's kind of caught on, and everybody most people have been exposed to it at one time or another. And it's a very simple concept. It's basically, you don't need a huge fan base, or you don't need a lot of people interested in your product or your, whatever you're doing to make a huge impact. Point is that if you have 1,000 true fans, they each give you $100 throughout the year, then you're going to make $100,000. Like that's a good living for people. That's above the median in the US at least.
For music of all things. Like,
from what? Yeah. And so like if you basically find those 1,000 true fans, and that's kind of going back to Nathan's story, right? If you find one true fan, one Miriam for you, you can turn that person into 1,000 of them, because not that one person's going to give you $100,000, but you can find that one person and then like, okay, this person really resonated with my music. Why did that person resonate with my music? What kind of person is this? Like she's 24 and she was in college, or, you can find those similarities, and then likely there's probably going to be a whole bunch of other Miriams out there that their name isn't Miriam, but they're very, very close to that original Miriam.
Yes.
And so essentially you can find out that, person's story, find out as much as you can about these true fans, because ultimately you're going to be able to find more of those if you're intentional about reaching out. And at a certain point, like it's kind of a weird conversation, because some people think like, oh, if I'm monetizing this, it's evil. And while I disagree with that, I also think that the impact, right, that you make, like Nathan was talking about, the impact, the emotional impact that you can make is so much more valuable than any monetary value you extract from this.
Yes.
Right? Monetary exchanges are an exchange of value. So they give you money, which is valuable, in exchange for something that they find valuable, which is your music, your brand, etc. By having major emotional impact, they are now willing to probably spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars with you in any one given year because of that value, that emotion that you have given them.
If you think that 1,000 people sounds like a lot, it is. That's a lot of people. If you were to stand in front of 1,000 people, you'd probably be like, the butterflies would be going in your stomach. That's a lot of people. But in the grand scheme of things, and how many people are in the world, I just feel like the ratio is in your favor. If you could find 1,000 people that rock with you that much, it's actually more doable than you think. It's a journey to get there, but like I think it's more approachable than you might think, because I think the ratio is on your side. You just need just 1,000 people out of the however many people are out there, right? Like I think that's possible. I would encourage you, like, choose to believe that that's possible. And maybe this is a deeper mindset thing, which maybe we don't have time to go into right now, but like choose to believe that your music is valuable enough to really impact 1,000 people in a powerful way. Like you have to believe that. You have to believe that your music is worth something. And that's what we believe here at this podcast. That's why we're doing all this. It's because we believe you matter. If you're an artist and you make music, your music matters. It's worth sharing. It's worth putting out there. Don't overthink it. Don't second guess it. We've got strategies and tactics for you. Like, yes, we got you. But at the core, you also have to change your mindset and believe that your music is worth it. And 1,000 people to believe the same thing as you, I actually don't think that's that big of an ask. I think it's more doable than you think.
Yeah. One last thing that I want to leave all of you with in this episode. So this got a little heavy at the end, but at the end of the day, I want to kind of bring this back to something that's super tactical, super practical for you to be able to do. And that is be so consistent that it becomes unreasonable that you don't become successful.
Oh, say it again. Come on, pump me up. Say it again. I'll say it again. Be so consistent that it becomes unreasonable that you won't be successful.
Another way to say this is volume negates luck. That's another one of my favorite quotes. If you do something enough, it will become unreasonable. Two things: that you won't be excellent at it. If you write 1,000 songs, it's unreasonable to expect that you won't be good at writing songs after you've written 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
That is just the law of learning. Like, you will learn to get better. Obviously, there's ways to shortcut that, and it's not guaranteed that you're going to be the best songwriter, but you're going to be significantly better than when you started. And then the second thing is that because you've written all of these, or because you've been so consistent with writing, releasing, putting out content, right? If you're consistent with that for long enough, it's unreasonable to expect that you won't attract fans towards you. But the problem is that most artists get really discouraged after their very first release. I was like, when I first decided, I'm like, I'm going to be an artist. I released my first project and I got 6 monthly listeners. I'm like, oh, well, this sucks. Like, I spent thousands of dollars producing this EP and nobody listened to it. It's very discouraging when you end up in that situation. But at the same time, you have to recognize, I just started. It's unreasonable to expect that I'm going to be the best artist in the world, even though that's what we all like inherently want. But setting yourself up for success means setting proper expectations that you're not going to be the best when you first start. And that's okay. It's okay to start at the bottom. There's only one way to go.
That's right.
And so just be super consistent with your stuff after you begin. With that, the people who are the most consistent have early wins. And this is a psychological thing. If you're automatically already good at something when you first start, like you have natural talent for it, you will go further and go harder and be more consistent than anyone else because you've already been rewarded for that activity. More practically speaking, so I work with an agency. What we do is we help artists get 100,000 streams on their very first release in order for them to build that momentum and also their initial success so that they can be motivated to be consistent in the future. So that's what I'm really passionate about, is helping people have some level of success right away, that they feel like, okay, this is possible. This is something that I can do, because they have that kind of under their belt and they recognize what's possible with their music, and they're not going to be that other, comparatively to the other artist who releases stuff, doesn't do a great job and gets 10 monthly listeners. Like, who's going to go further? Who's going to be more motivated for that next song? Who's going to try to write a better song? Who's going to write more songs to write a better song for their next release? That's
so good. That's so good. Well, I'm pumped. Let's end the episode so we can all go make songs and go make content and go get fans. In order to do that, right? Let's get this episode over so you can go take action. Want to help you take action? Please check out Tyson's guide he referenced at the very beginning. He's in this world, y'all. He is in this world. Please go check out that guide. I think another companion guide to all this, like we just talked about, to try to be consistent means you need to have a workflow, right? And the workflow is what's going to enable you to create songs faster and more efficiently and get to those songs that are going to be able to like resonate with people, and even for just yourself as an artist to get those songs out of you, right? So in order to do that, I have a free guide. You can go to finishsongsguide.com. The whole point of that thing, I made it because I was struggling with writer's block, procrastination, and then I was just feeling stale. I just felt like my workflow wasn't inspiring. I was kind of tired of the way I was making songs. So if any of that resonates with you, or especially, oh my goodness, if I had this thing at the beginning, this guide compared with Tyson's, like, you're set. I mean, oh my goodness, this is going to be your year, So you can head to finishsongsguide.com to check that out. It's completely free, no strings attached, 10 pages, and it'll walk you through 5 steps to knock out a song, and you just rinse and repeat for every song to get those songs out of you and get them into the ears of potential fans. Thank you all so much for listening. We'd love it if you would leave a review. That would be awesome. Tell us what you think so far, and then please let us know if there's anything else we can cover. Because again, like we said, that's the whole point of this podcast. We don't want to shy away from anything. All right. So if there's something that means a lot to you, it means a lot to us, and we would love to cover it to help you and to help other artists out there too. So take a second, if you wouldn't mind, let us know what else we can do to cover things for you, and then also just let us know how we're doing so far too. That'd be great feedback if you're so willing. If you're so willing. All right, go make songs. Go get some fans. Commit to this process of becoming better. Get consistent. We'll see you back here real soon.